Hello, welcome to Press TV International News, broadcasting live from Iran's capital, Tehran. This is the 10:30 p.m. edition of World News. Our lead story: thousands of Bahraini people have gathered in the village of Jid Hafs, east of the capital Manama, to mourn the death of an anti-regime protester. Activists say the 19-year-old protester died of wounds he sustained during an anti-regime rally. They accuse police of preventing the victim's family from taking him to the hospital. Also, regime forces have reportedly attacked a group of female protesters in the village of Qadam. Meanwhile, activists say Saudi-backed forces raided several homes in the village of Sanabis near Manama and detained opposition protesters. Regime forces have also intensified their military presence in and around the iconic Martyrs Square, the former Pearl Square. The square has been the focal point of demonstrations against the ruling Al Khalifa regime. Earlier, we spoke to Qasim Al-Hashmi, member of Bahraini opposition movement in London, to get his take on the current situation in Bahrain.
The message that the monarchy wanted to send to the people is that it's either our rule, it's either our behavior, it's either our instruction and the way we rule and the way we control the country, or there are no safety, no security. So there is no way that we will go back before 14th of February 2011, and whatever the monarchy messages sending to us will remain on our stand. We are certain that we are reaching our goals soon, whether it is today or tomorrow. We will never go up, we will never go back the same way.
People in Saudi Arabia's eastern province have staged fresh anti-regime protests. They chanted slogans against provincial ruler Mohammed bin Fahd, as well as the Al Khalifa regime of Bahrain. The demonstrators spilled out into the streets in the town of Qatif on the day they dubbed the Friday of Resistance. The eastern province has been the focal point of a popular uprising against the Al Saud dynasty over the past year. Saudi regime forces have been tough on the protesters, killing several of them in recent months. Riyadh has strictly banned anti-government gatherings across the kingdom. Saudi Arabia's Western allies, including the U.S., have kept silent on the crackdown. The United States and the European Union have called on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to step down. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton once again condemned what she called Assad's crackdown on the opposition. Clinton said Assad must step down and allow a process that would help the country go forward. She also added that her country will support the opposition and at the same time put further pressure on Damascus. Meanwhile, EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton voiced concern about the humanitarian situation in Syria and backed Clinton's call on Assad to give up power. The joint U.S.-EU call comes as Russia and China have opposed any foreign intervention in Syria, saying it will cause further instability in the region. Earlier this month, Moscow and Beijing vetoed a UN Security Council resolution that called on President Assad to step down. The United States and the European Union have called on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to step down over what they described as the crackdown on the opposition. This is the latest in efforts by the West and certain Arab countries which support the Syrian opposition and want regime change in the country. On the contrary, those very same countries have remained silent on Bahraini regime's deadly crackdown against the opposition. Arab states say time is running out to bring the situation in Syria under control, while they've been advocating negotiations with Israel over the past decade.
The United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution condemning Syria over what it called the government's crackdown on opposition protests. Backed by the US and Britain, the resolution was drafted by the Arab League. Earlier this month, the Arab organization also pushed for a Western-backed UN Security Council resolution which called for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to resign. The resolution was vetoed by Russia and China. The Arab League has also called on the Security Council to send troops to Syria. It has decided to cut all diplomatic ties with Damascus and offered political and financial support to the opposition. The Arab League and the US-led Western countries claim that regime change would put an end to the ongoing unrest in Syria. Meanwhile, reports suggest that weapons are being sent to Syria by Arab countries that have close links to the US. Suspicion grew further over the real motive on the Syrian situation when the leader of the terrorist Al-Qaeda organization, Ayman al-Zawahiri, echoed a similar call for the fall of the Syrian president. The Secretary General of the Lebanese resistance movement, Hezbollah, has accused them of making an alliance to overthrow Assad.
America and Europe and Israel and the so-called Arab moderate countries who take responsibility of all the catastrophes in Palestine and Iraq, Iran and the people of the region over the past decades. Isn't strange? And Al-Qaeda as well, for all them to come together, they insist on accomplishing one goal, to overthrow the regime in Syria.
Nasrallah said the reason behind efforts to overthrow the Syrian government is that Damascus does not accept the US and Israeli conditions. It's also because Assad's government supports resistance against Israel and its allies. Nasrallah accused Lebanon's March the 14th alliance of instigating violence in Syria. The Hezbollah leader also criticized some Arab governments for rejecting talks with Damascus on the grounds that time is running out to deal with the situation. This while they have been advocating dialogue with Israel over the past decades. The double standards adopted by certain Arab states in the West are highlighted when it comes to Bahrain, a country which hosts the US 5th Naval Fleet. They remain silent on Bahraini regime's deadly crackdown against the opposition. The call for supporting democracy in Syria comes by Arab countries who have bleak human rights record. At the same time, troops from these countries, including Saudi Arabia, are in Bahrain to help crush opposition protests. The United States, a self-proclaimed defender of human rights, has also been supplying the Bahraini regime with weapons used during the crackdown of pro-democracy protests.
Thousands of Yemeni people have flooded the streets in fresh protests against embattled ruler Ali Abdullah Saleh. The protests took place in the capital Sana'a and the city of Ib. The demonstrators called for more anti-Saleh rallies until the revolutionary demands are all met. Yemenis will go to the polls on February 21 to vote for or against Vice President Hadi Mansour Abd Rabu as the transitional head of state. Yemen has been the scene of mass rallies since Saleh left the country for the United States, with the protesters demanding that he stand trial for what they call crimes against humanity. Saleh ruled Yemen for over 3 decades and responded to anti-regime protests over the past year with an iron fist. Libyans are marking the first anniversary of the revolution that toppled Muammar Gaddafi after more than 40 years in power. Celebrations have been underway for days in the eastern city of Benghazi, which led the revolution. And in the capital Tripoli, hundreds poured out to the streets on the eve of the anniversary, waving the national flag. The celebrations come amid fears of continuing instability. The African nation has been witnessing angry protests against the ruling National Transitional Council over unmet demands during the past few months. Many say they feel let down by the NTC.
It has left Libya in a confused state. Sporadic violence goes on, but less frequently. Rumours are circulating widely around the capital, fanned by Saudi Gaddafi's remarks earlier in the week of a new uprising. His words, a beefing up of security nationwide, and a very public display of who holds power was on show as a deterrent to those who still think in terms of destabilising the transitional government. The Zintanis who took part in the convoy were in party spirits, It's hoped their presence will provide reassurance to those who have been calling for more security. For some, it's an easier life, but the hardships millions faced linger on in the memory. Libya is currently adapting to life without rules. For many, total freedom is welcomed, and given this notion, it's easy to understand why distrust has grown towards the National Transitional Council. Certain freedoms will diminish as the role of the state grows, but it's not a problem for one Tripoli resident.
It's a challenge for Libyan people now to stand up and start building their country and fight find solution for all the big problems here in education, in health, in everywhere.
Actually, I hope that it will become better than those really past 12 months, which having revolutions, what's having between problems, lack of security, having everything and so on. So I hope this will become better, become more security, more stuff.
After 42 years living under a dictator, many Libyans fear what's around the corner. Hopefully ahead is a democratic process, but any deterioration to the security situation could yet scupper or delay those plans. Nick Jones, Press TV, Tripoli.
A bomb blast outside a mosque in northwestern Pakistan has killed dozens of people. The blast took place in Parachinar town in Kuram district near the border with Afghanistan. More than 50 others were injured in the bombing. A breakaway faction of Pakistani pro-Taliban militants has claimed responsibility for the attack. Angry crowds took to the streets in Parachinar in protest at the bombing. Reports say several people were killed after security forces opened fire on the protesters. A report by Gallup shows that unemployment has increased in the United States in mid-February 2012. The reading puts the mid-month unemployment rate at 9%, up from 8.6% for January. A U.S. government report earlier said unemployment had decreased in January. The U.S. government reports also count American citizens holding part-time jobs as employed people. However, Gallup's unemployment and underemployment measures show a sharp deterioration in job market conditions since mid-January. The U.S. has been grappling with a stagnant economy since the recent financial downturn in the country and elsewhere in the Western world. A U.S. immigration agent has been killed and another injured in a shooting incident at a federal building in Los Angeles. The incident apparently happened following an argument between two federal agents.
When the incident escalated, one agent fired several rounds at the other agent, wounding him. The victim is currently hospitalized and in stable condition. At that time when that incident occurred, another agent working nearby intervened and fired his weapon to prevent additional rounds being fired at the victim. This resulted in the death of the shooter.
An investigation is underway. The agents' identities have not been released. Authorities have described the incident as workplace violence. The FBI says it believes the shooting was an isolated incident and the shooter was acting alone. Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip have rallied to show support for an Islamic Jihad activist who is on a hunger strike in an Israeli prison.
The resistance brother Adnan's will win, as will the will of all our prisoners and heroes. The entire Palestinian nation, all its parties as well as officials will never let down these prisoners.
Thousands of people from various Palestinian factions rallied after Friday prayers to denounce Israel's unlawful arrest of Khader Adnan. Adnan, who was detained in mid-December, is on the 62nd day of his hunger strike to protest his illegal detention. Israel has been holding him under what it calls administrative detention. That means he can be detained indefinitely without trial or charge. Human rights physicians in Israel say Adnan is facing imminent death as he suffers from significant muscular atrophy. Many other prisoners held in Israel have joined the hunger strike to support Adnan. The Islamic Jihad group has vowed to retaliate if he dies. Britain and France have agreed to boost bilateral cooperation over a new generation of nuclear power plants. The announcement was made in a meeting between British Prime Minister David Cameron and French President Nicolas Sarkozy.